Okay, we are starting now with the right side. This is the left side. You can see right here, this is the left, and all of my left side is finished. It's 4 hoopings. And I just want to comment that when you embroider this first, number 1, this will be the first hooping on the left side. You can see there's a stitch right here that is sewn in, and it's a basting stitch. Make sure you don't rip that out when you take out the stabilizer. Here it is right here. Because that is going to show you, when you get rid of all your markings, where the center needs to line up when you attach this border to the quilt itself. So make sure you don't pull out that stitched in center line. Because as you can see on this piece of fabric, possibly, I don't know if my camera can pick it all up, but this is not in the middle. This isn't going to be where you think it's going to be. So you want to make sure you leave that in. All right, so now up here you can see here's the right side, and we are ready to start the right side. And the first stitch, I have already marked the first stitch on my grid. It's going to be about, it's about a 1/2 inch to the right and a 1/2 inch above center on the grid. That's where the marker is when you mark your first stitch. Now, when I go to hoop it up, I'm going to find my center crosshair and go, 5 inches over, 5.5 inches over here to the right, and it's going to be on this. That's going to line up on this crosshair right here. So again, I do have a little bit more fabric on this side, but I think I'm just going to move it over 1 grid so I have a little bit more fabric here on this side and be able to catch it in my hoop. I'm going to fold this, grab both of those, slide this right underneath under here, and just push it down. I like to just push it and dent it. Right now my fabric is totally crazy, but it's easier if you kind of dent it first. It's easier to get it in here straight. Remember to try and keep 2 fingers down here at the bottom. That kind of controls your hoop a little bit as you're trying to get it straightened up. That doesn't look bad, but I need this to go up just a skosh more. Let's see. Ooh, that's not looking too bad. Over here, just a tinge. Let me move that up here. Everything looks pretty good except this lower end down here, so I'm just going to gently move that fabric over. Wow, that looks super good. Okay, put my arm across here, flip up my fabric so it's out of my way, and tighten it. Okay, now once you have this tightened, let me look at that again. It looks like mine slipped a little. You know what? I'm going to leave it like that so I can show you how to rotate your fabric. So I did my best job of lining it up so that this is pointing very close, or at least within a 1/2 inch of my target, which would be that center crosshair. All right, looks like it's all good to go. Let's go hoop it up and attach it to the module. All right, we are ready to start the right side borders. As you can see on this, my left side is already finished, so I'm starting with the very first one on the right side. My needle needs to be right here at this crosshair, and it is not, it's way over here. So I'm going to go to my Move Motif icon and use the knobs, my multifunction knobs, and get my needle right at that crosshair. And bam, that's it, babe, right on it. So that looks great. Now I'm going to release the screen by touching the little breadcrumb needle. Now, here's what I need to see. Can I walk the needle straight down this line that I have drawn? That's how I know if I hooped it straight. So this is called sewing without thread. And to do that, we're going to go on a Bernina, you go to the broken thread icon. On a Baby Lock and a Brother, you would go to +10 and walk it down. On a Foff and a Viking, you go to the little, they have a plus minus on the front of your screen, go to +++ and walk it down. All right, so I'm going to turn my top knob to the right and check my needle position. Just barely to the right, but not bad. But that is way to the right. So if you can see that, my line is here. I'm a good 1/16 of an inch off. I know that doesn't seem like much, but I like to be perfect. So I'm going to release my screen, and I'm going to put it back at the beginning of stitch 1. So I'm going to lift my needle up. I'm going to go to color 2 and then just go back to color 1 because I want to be at the first stitch of 1 and be right at that intersection. So that's perfect. So I'm going to rotate my design, but I'm going to do it in pinpoint. So I'm going to go to my editing pencil, big I for information. Second icon down on the right is pinpoint. I'm going to make sure that the rectangle butterfly is not selected. In other words, there's no big yellow box around it, so I touch it to deselect it. I'm going to zoom in 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Zoom in as much as I can, and what I'm looking for is there's some place on the screen you're going to see a circle with a crosshair, and that indicates where your needle is, and your needle has already been positioned at stitch number 1. So I'm going to activate the butterfly, and when I activate it, this little circle with the crosshair goes away, so I have to really look to see where it is. I'm going to activate the butterfly, and I'm going to touch the top of that little line right here, because that was where the first stitch goes. Drop my needle. It's already in perfect place because I did that when I was in stitch 1. I'm going to hit set. When I do, this will turn yellow. Hit set. That turns yellow, and I've locked in so that this position on the screen coordinates with the position on the fabric. I'm going to zoom out now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm looking for the bottom of that line, and really it's way down here. So I'm going to zoom in. I can see the line right there. I'm going to zoom in again and again and again. I like to zoom in all the way because maybe I touched right here and I couldn't tell. So now I'm going to touch well below it in the white, and it goes to the marker will automatically go to the closest piece of embroidery. Perfect. Now I'm going to drop my needle and see where it is. And if you can look at my needle, you can see that my needle is actually, I am over to the left too far. So I'm going to lift my needle up. And so I want to use my zigzag knob, which is the top knob. I'm going to turn it to the right. I'm going to turn it a couple clicks there till I get that right on my line. That's it right there. Now it's dead on the center of that line. So now I know I've really hooped straight. I'm going to hit set. But before I do, I'm going to zoom out so you can see both of my markers. And there are both of my markers. They're in a vertical kind of position. When I hit set, this one will be turned yellow. It turns yellow. I have 2 yellow markers, and I am ready to release the screen and go back. Now, if you have the update for the 880, when you touch set, both of your markers should disappear. If they both disappear, you did hit it, you did set it, and it's exactly where it should be. That's just a new update to pinpoint. I'm going to hit big I for information. Needle in the lower right corner. I'm returning to first stitch. I've already sewed it without thread. I did it in pinpoint, so I'm going to advance to color 2. I'm going to float some stabilizer underneath my hoop down over here, put on the right shade of thread, and I am ready to rock and roll. All right, let's go do it. Alrighty, we have just completed the first hooping on the right border. See here it says right. So on the right border, this is the left side's finished. This is the first hooping, and you can see I have a basting stitch that goes through here. Be very careful when you take out your stabilizer that you don't pull out your stitches, because you will need that for your mark later on when you connect this border to the center. We're now going to move down here, and we're going to do hooping number 2, the engine, and it is going to go down right here below this blue car. I've already marked the first stitch on the grid, and it is about 5.5 inches above the center and about 1/4 inch to the right. When I go to hoop it, this arrow has to point to this intersection of the brown and the blue right here in this corner. So I'm going to set this on, so that is pointing to that intersection. But you can see I have no fabric over here to the right, so I'm actually going to move this over a couple grids. Like that would be great, and that way I have fabric over here to be caught in the hoop. You may notice that my fabric is a little short right here. It's because I cut my fabric accidentally short, and I'm hoping for the best. So we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, this will just be a sample for the video. Alrighty, so I'm going to push this in right here. I'm actually going to pull this over one more grid because I want to have this fabric on the right. I want it to come up so I can at least pull it if I need to. Well, that doesn't look too bad actually. So I'm straight on this grid, which is just wonderful. I'm going to tighten that up. My arrow should be pointing over here. It's about 1 inch over to the left, but when I go to the machine, I'm just going to move my needle. It'll be here. I'm just going to move my needle there, and I'll be able to embroider out this engine. Once we hoop it, we do not use the grid, so please put the grid away and don't leave it on top of your fabric here because we are not going to need it. And I'm going to take this over and we're going to go ahead and line up number 2, the engine. All right, let's do it. All right, here we are. We're ready to line this design up. I have number 2 engine on the screen, and we are just about ready to get our needle in position. So the first thing I'm going to do is, if you look at my needle, you can see my needle, which is supposed to be right here, is a good inch away. So obviously that's going to have to be moved. So I'm going to go to Move Motif icon. And I'm just going to move my needle into position before I do anything else. Get that needle right where it needs to be. Up a little, up a little. Ooh, that looks pretty swell. That's it right there. So now my needle is exactly where it's supposed to be. That is where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to release this screen by touching the little breadcrumb needle at the top. And I'm going to see if I can walk this design so that it can go from here straight across over here where it's supposed to, according to the directions. So I'm going to go to broken thread and I'm going to walk it and drop my needle. Nice. Walk it, drop my needle. Well, that's perfect. Let me drop it, go right to the end. There's the end. Okay, that's actually... we hooped it perfect. Yay. I love it when that happens. Okay, so that's what I needed to do. I needed to be able to walk my design straight across this little black line that's at the end of that blue. It did it, so I'm ready to go. I'm going to release my screen by touching the little breadcrumb needle. That was color 1. I'm going to advance to color 2. I'm going to float some stabilizer underneath my hoop. Just lift it up and float it underneath there. And put on the right shade of thread. And I am ready to embroider out that engine. Let's go do it. Alrighty, we are ready to do the last segment of the right border. You can see up here, here's my right border, here's my left. The left is completely finished. The first hooping on the right was these 2 cars, and then we went down here to the engine. So now we're doing right up here, and that's going to be our last hooping. So this is going to be hooping number 3 on the right side, and it is called the skier. Okay, so my first stitch is about 4.5 inches down, about 2.5 inches over here to the left. That's where my first stitch mark is when you go to mark yours. Now it's going to line up right here at the end of this little black line, and it's going to go down, around, boom, 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 all the way around and back up. So you'll look at your instructions to see that. So it's going to go in this area, and of course I'm going to try and go as straight as I can with my line. But again, you can notice right here, no fabric. So I'm just going to scoot my hoop over maybe 2 grids so that I have fabric up here I can catch in the hoop, and I am still going to be on my same line. Well, actually up and down vertically I'm perfect, but my horizontal line is a little over to the left, but I'm just going to move my needle over when I get to the hoop. So I'm going to take off my outer hoop right here, and I'm going to hold these together, slide that underneath, and punch that back down in here. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, so that's pretty crooked. So now I'm just going to get my line straight. That's mostly what I'm looking for here, is I want to make sure the line that I drew is as straight as I can get it. So I'm going to come right here, hold that, and I can move it just a skosh over right there, and that is perfect. Yes, that looks lovely. Now, if you're using a Bernina hoop, this hoop is 15 3/4 inches long. So I've got like 3 inches down here I'm not using, and I probably have 3 inches, if not 4, up there I'm not using. So I got lots of room up and down, and it's only going to be 6 inches wide total. So I actually, on this 8-inch wide hoop, I actually have plenty of room left and right also. But the line that I drew is right underneath the line on the grid. So I'm going to hold this across, tighten it. You can see I have a little bit of fabric right here, so that I caught it. Again, once you get it hooped, remove this remove the grid because now we don't use it. Now, instead of using this mark, now we're using the stitched in placement line down here. Now my needle is going to be way over here, so I'm just going to scoot it over here to where the first stitch is, and that's how we're going to line that up. All right, let's go do that and get this one done. Okay, we are now going to line up the very last hooping here, which is number 3, the skier, for the right side border. So you can see right here, I'm back to first stitch, and you can see my needle is here. It should be at the end of this mark, but it's a little bit of ways. So I'm going to go to my move motif icon on the screen. I'm going to use my big knobs, and I'm going to bring this down and get it right on that mark. That looks pretty good right there. I can live with that. Now we're going to see if I hooped it straight enough. So I'm going to release my screen by touching the little breadcrumb needle. I'm going to go to broken thread because that's how I can walk through a design. And I'm going to turn my knob a little bit, and if I look on the screen, I can see one more stitch that I'm actually at the bottom of this line. So I'm going to check to see if I'm at the bottom here. Actually, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to walk down to the next corner. I like to always check my corners. Wow, that's dead on. Okay, now let's walk down to the next corner. Anytime there's an actual corner, I check out that corner because that helps me to see if I nail in my corners beautiful, then everything goes just fine. Oops, missed the corner. Let me back it up one stitch. That still looks great. Okay, let's go up here. This should be on the flat surface. All right, let's go up here. I'm going to go to that corner right there just to check it out. That's a little bit off, but you know what? My thread was not oh, that's perfect and back on. My thread got whipped out because I was too rough. Can't hardly believe that. Too rough taking out my stabilizer. So I loosened mine up a little. But all the rest of that lines up absolutely fabulous. So I'm saying that one is perfect. Okay, so I'm going to release my screen. I did color number 1. I'm going to advance to color number 2. Wow, look at that. It's going to go all the way up to the top because it is going to actually put in a basting stitch. So I'm going to put my thread on, and I am ready, and floats and stabilizer underneath this hoop, and I'll be ready to go. All right, let's get this guy embroidered out. Let's do it.